Hi, my name is Ryan Garrett with Blue Ridge Farm. Today we're going to talk about pruning fruit trees. I learned how to do this from the master pruners at Harry and David, and I've been maintaining small-scale orchards and vineyards in both a homestead and commercial setting for about 18 years now, which is to say I'm not an expert, but I can probably help you with the basics. The first thing that we're going to need to discuss is what tools you need to prune a tree successfully, and you can really get away with 2 to 3 tools. So the first one that you're absolutely going to need is a sharp, clean set of secateurs. These are Baco PXRs. They're a little bit more expensive than other secateurs, but if you're going to be doing a lot of pruning, they are absolutely worth the money. The other tool that you're going to want is a good folding pruning saw, and the reason I say folding is it's just so much easier to keep it in your pocket. Basically, you've got the secateurs for doing all your light kind of minimalistic cuts, and then you've got this for any time you need to take a big cut. So one of the first things that we're going to do on any apple tree or any fruit tree is remove the dead, diseased, or damaged branches. And last year we've got a really good example of that because we had a bear that was coming into this tree over and over breaking branches. So the first thing that we're going to do is get rid of stuff that is already sort of broken off. And that's going to help give you an idea of what there is left to work with. So I always start there. So this is a good example of the kind of damage that we're trying to remove and why. One of the reasons that we prune fruit trees is because we're trying to promote light and airflow. And as you can see, we've got this branch that's coming down into another layer of the tree. That's going to prevent a lot of light and encourage things like mold and discourage birds from coming in and helping us deal with pests. So this is exactly the sort of thing we just want to clean up, and you can see automatically that there's already more light in the area. One of the reasons that we prune fruit trees to begin with is we're trying to encourage airflow and light. At the end of the day, if you remember that, that's going to help you out. And light doesn't come from the top. The sun's rarely directly above us. Light generally kind of comes in from the sides. So we're trying to keep sort of open lanes of traffic for the light to come in. And what that really translates to is you have things like this lead here that is competing with this lead here. This is exactly the kind of branch that you want to get rid of. So in general, what you're trying to do is just sort of make things a little bit open. Anytime you have a cluster of branches that are kind of crossing and being all gnarly with each other, think about what you could take to just promote a little bit cleaner of a look. And sometimes it only takes a little piece like that to make a big difference in your airflow. But take a cut, take a step back, take a look at what you've done, and try and plot things out, because this is more of an art than a science. You kind of just have to listen to what the tree's telling you it needs. So one of the most important lessons that you can learn about pruning fruit trees is that if you take a vegetative branch, which is a vertical branch, and you pull it down to an angle where it's more horizontal, it will become a fruiting branch. And that's a concept that's worth knowing, because it's worth knowing that a branch that's at an angle like this is going to produce fruit, whereas a branch that's going straight up like this is just going to produce vegetation. It's not going to give you much yield. So I removed this branch a few minutes ago in order to help kind of control the height of this tree so we have the ability to harvest fruit a little bit better. So if you're like most of us, you're going to inherit at least one tree on your homestead that has been severely neglected for a really long time. And it might be tempting to try and fix all the problems that you see with the tree all in one year. But you're going to pay for that, because you generally only want to remove about 20% of the vegetation on a tree every single year, which means if you have a lot of fixing to do, it's going to take you about 5 years to do it. So think ahead and maybe just pick a side of the tree on a severely neglected tree and do a little bit of work on that, or clean out the mess that's in the center of the tree and leave it be for the year. Come back, think ahead, and take your time. After all, it's kind of nice to have something in this life of instant gratification that takes more time to get done. Oh, now you're chill. Now that I'm not trying to talk. Fine. Fine. Whatever, geese. You silly geese. As you're cutting out branches, one of the things that you want to look for is there's basically a little joint on every single branch called a collar, where it kind of meets with the main stem to the branch that you're cutting off. And you want your cuts to be on that collar. If you cut too deeply, you cut too flush, the branch doesn't want to heal over very well. So it's really important to cut a little bit higher because it helps it scab over so that disease doesn't get into the tree. This is another good branch to get rid of because we have basically something that's coming out of another lead. And when it's coming from the bottom like that, it doesn't really have a lot of strength. So if that developed into a fruiting branch, it would eventually just break off anyway. So like I was saying earlier, the only difference between a vegetative branch and a fruiting branch is really its orientation. If it's straight up and down, it's vegetative. If it's at an angle, it's going to produce fruit. We have a branch right here that's on a main fruiting line that's going straight up and down, and it's really just going into this other fruiting branch, so it's taking away airflow. This is exactly what you're trying to get rid of. And now you can see I've got a nice gap here to let light and air in. So I've talked a little bit about how if you have a vertical branch and you pull it down to about a 45-degree angle, it'll turn into a fruiting branch. And sometimes you don't necessarily want to do that with your pruners by cutting off the vegetative growth. You want to do that with a vegetative branch that you'd like to be in a different orientation. That's a process called training. Now, there's lots of ways to go about that. One of the cheap ways to do it is to take Ziploc bags full of sand and just put them on a branch to pull them down. The problem is that gravity doesn't exactly turn off, so it keeps pulling the branch down, and sometimes you end up with branches that are going at a downward angle. You don't want that. A more professional way of doing it is to take nails and a little bit of string and put one nail in the base of your tree and then tie the branch to where you want it to that nail. That makes for a really excellent professional orientation, and big vineyards like the Harry and David, they've been doing that for years. Another way that I see in old school orchards is to use spreader bars that you would place in the crotch of a tree in order to get that angle that you're looking for. So one of the other cool things that you can do while you're pruning is you can actually make new branches show up in locations that you want to. A couple years ago, I actually planned for this branch to occur where it is. And how I did that, because I want to establish some new fruiting branches, is you find a little bump on the tree. Those are called nodes. And you can basically score with your secateurs or a knife over the top of that bump. And what happens is the nutrients from the cadmium hit that score mark that you do and come back, and they activate that node, and it'll kick out a branch where you want it. Also, apple branches make great goose toys. They're looking at us like we're crazy now, but that's just because we're filming.